Is Ghost in the Shell 2 the best film of the 2000s? Quite possibly so. Is Batu's Basset Hound Gabriel the greatest animated animal since Figaro the cat in Disney's Pinocchio? Almost definitely. I once heard of a tale of a legendary set of English language fan subs for Ghost in the Shell 2. Somehow, given the allocated space, the subtitles contained footnotes expanding upon and explaining all of the screenplay's philosophic references. If anyone knows what I'm talking about and can offer further insight, please do so. I admit, I used to belong to a camp which considered Oshii's sequel to be inferior to the original 1995 classic. I still consider the original film to be perhaps a greater, more visceral feat of animation, although narratively, Ghost in the Shell 2 is one of the most profound works of art I could have ever possibly imagined. It's hard for me to believe that all of this was devised in the first place. Here's how it was, allegedly. Mamoru Oshii wanted to combine all of these ideas into one feature film, and this concept existed prior to it being worked into a sequel to his Ghost in the Shell anime feature. This is important. Sometimes a work of creativity can be enhanced via its placement within certain parameters. Maybe Oshii could have created a stronger film if he hadn't decided to set his story in the Ghost in the Shell universe. We could have a phenomenally abstract and phenomenally brilliant, alienating, although rather beautiful, episode such as Angel's Egg or Talking Head were. Instead, he fused these ideas and arguably made them more coherent, grounded, and stresses their relevance by incorporating them within the set parameters of the Ghost in the Shell scaffold. Now, I also happen to be of the opinion that The Matrix Resurrections, the fourth Matrix film, was doomed to fail, and sadly does, I think, due to its insistence on being a Matrix film. I sincerely think that the Wachowskis' once forward-thinking ambition was inevitably stifled via their choice of composing another Matrix sequel, having to figure out means of placing contemporary themes into the Matrix universe. And it is, well, a bit cringeworthy. But let's listen to what Noel Oakeshott had to say about Ghost in the Shell 2 when he too had critical things to say about Matrix Resurrections. If all this makes it sound like Resurrection's failure was inevitable, it wasn't, at least not in the abstract. Ghost in the Shell 2, Innocence, had a similar mandate, and is in some ways a similar work. Beyond the conceptual overlaps, each is a knotted, philosophically dense maze that aesthetically differentiates itself from its predecessors. Though initially divisive, Innocence has come to be recognised as the superior Ghost in the Shell film. Its approach is instructive as to the choices made in Resurrections. Rather than turning inward or seeking to extend the first film, Mamoru Oshii schematizes Innocence around a series of enduring pillars in the theoretical landscape, and constructs the film in the interplay between that schema and a visual, tonal, experiential mode of narrative. Innocence goes far further than Ghost in the Shell, deliberately excavating its structure, digging deep beneath its flaws, and surfacing with a more holistic set of answers for the viewer. Oshii doesn't shy away from the possibilities of the expanded formal range opened up by access to generative animation, and instead aggressively uses it, even in the limited state that it existed in circa 2004. And all of this while retaining internal coherence and gesturing toward the narrative extension of Ghost in the Shell that keeps it accessible to the mass market necessary to fund such a project. And it is in every regard a more successful work than Resurrections. There we go. I compare the possibility of watching Ghost in the Shell, the 1995 film, regularly to reading passages of the Bhagavad Gita every morning, an experience recommended by Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I can only imagine what the effect of viewing both films as a ritual would be. A world of lucidity, ambition, intellectual bravery, and intense speculation. Possibly wonderful, plausibly terrifying. I think what Ghost in the Shell 2 does well is demonstrate the never-ending existential implications of computer encroachment on human experience. The gravity of this film's narrative is horrifying. It essentially revolves around gynoids, fembots who are marketed and sold as sex toys, having been illegally implanted with ghosts, a term for the human sentience of a cyborg in this fictional universe. They were illegally installed a ghost in order to make them more lifelike, which acts as the possible motivation for certain gynoids to commit homicides against legal human beings. Ghost in the Shell 2 features a segment wherein one might be unsure whether their DVD is scratched and replaying the same spot, or whether their file is corrupted and VLC is having trouble playing it. I assure you this is not the case. Batu and Togusa have been placed in an infinite causality loop by Kim. If you don't know exactly what that means but think it sounds cool, oh, it's extremely interesting. Do you remember when I said that Ghost in the Shell, the 1995 film, mostly consists of philosophic dialogue scenes? Its sequel is even more so, and with a longer runtime, 100 minutes rather than 80 odd, more opportunities to take risks, being an established franchise and a surefire commercial hit in the producer's eyes, presumably, and therefore an even greater motivation for Oshii to tell his story rather than being requested to adapt someone else's IP. Ghost in the Shell 2 is an intense trip, one of the films which most transforms the space I am in, the world I inhabit, into something more interesting, graspable, and enriching. Let me elaborate upon that. Ghost in the Shell 2 always excites me. This manifestation of the possibilities which an ambitious imagination permits, extraordinary. It is a simple solace to be reminded of the film's existence, and watching it even more so. It moves me that one film can be so labyrinthine, yet so pointed, so audacious, yet narratively grounded, relentlessly forward-thinking, and yet also a timeless story about law enforcement officers riding together on the frontiers of morality. Ghost in the Shell 2 fans are no doubt in agreement with me when I heap praise upon it. I'm under the impression that those who worship the original film with a cultish, conservative fervour still consider Ghost in the Shell 2 to be tragically inferior, although I believe that there is a sizable number who do prefer the sequel, and may even consider it the greatest film ever made. Is it? Yeah, you know what, maybe it is. I'm lying here in my bed. It is 4:33 a.m. I felt somewhat ill yesterday, possibly something I ate, and spent much of yesterday sleeping off the cold skin on what was a very rainy day. As a result, I didn't get very much sleep last night/tonight, and now find myself wrapped up in blankets, eyes wide open, finishing up my Ghost in the Shell 2 write-up. What a life. I feel like a sweet drink to give myself something pleasurable without significantly upsetting my ill stomach. I have one can of Solo in the fridge, and I don't want to finish it and then not have any shops open for another hour or so. If I hop out of bed, it will be freezing. See, some of you around the world are thinking, silly Australian, you don't know the cold, you sweet summer child. Actually, we do. Our houses and buildings were and are designed to expel heat. North Americans and Europeans have complained that Australia is the coldest they have ever been as a result of this. Seriously. A can of Solo is tempting. This jacket is thick. The shower, with enough manipulation, can get quite hot, and there's some chop in my bowl. Life can be really good, and even better with the memory in one's mind of Ghost in the Shell 2. Anyway, do share your thoughts, if any, on Ghost in the Shell 2 in the comments below.